Hey, this is Seth with In Demand Career. I show people how to get jobs in digital marketing with no previous experience or education. And that includes my very special guest today, Christine, who was working as a substitute teacher in elementary schools, making about $15 an hour, and is now making $70,000 a year, working remotely in a much more fulfilling career. Really excited to share her career transition story with you. Thanks so much for being here, Christine.
Hi, Seth. Thank you for having me, and I'm very happy to be here to share my story.
Awesome. So why don't you start out telling us people what are you doing now? What kind of company you're working for? What are you making? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I'm a senior search engine marketing associate at IProspect, working on one of the business units within Microsoft. And I've been in the digital marketing field a little under 2 years now.
That is not a very long time at all. And that is a big company. And if anyone notices it sounds familiar, that's because Roberto, who I interviewed recently, one of my other students, also works for this agency. It's a very big agency. And how much are you making at this position?
$70,000 a year.
That's fantastic. And are you working in-house or remotely at this point?
Remotely.
Remotely. That's great. So you're at 70,000 a year. You've only been in the field for 2 years. Let's tell people how you got there. And I'm really, as I always said, I'm thrilled when I can get somebody out of the public education system into a better field. So why don't you tell people a little bit about your background and how you found the course?
Yeah, of course. So I was substitute teaching elementary school for 2 years while I was pursuing my master's in teaching and then a state teaching credential, which is required to teach in a classroom permanently. But during my last quarter, when I had to work in a classroom as a student teacher, right after that, I decided I need to pivot to another field. So I was researching what should I do, and I really wanted to work in tech, a position where I could be remote. And I was looking up computer engineering and data science because those are just fields that are really advertised online, like people talk about it. I've never heard of digital marketing and never really found that online. So I was looking up videos and I stumbled upon Engineered Truth. He was talking about careers versus expectations. And so I just saw some of your students on there talking about this course.
That's awesome.
And so after a few days of watching the testimonials, I decided to take it.
That's great. And I want to get into that and taking the course, but I'm just curious, you were working on a master's degree and you had a bachelor's degree already. So was student teaching like the first time you actually saw what it's like to teach in school?
So I actually graduated with a biology degree and I worked in a lab for a year and I hated it. And so I decided to pursue teaching.
And then you decided to pursue teaching. And why did you decide to pursue teaching?
Well, I love to teach and mentor. And I also found that this field, you're able to help and teach junior members of the company, which is just as rewarding.
You mean in digital marketing?
Yeah, digital marketing.
But what was it about teaching in public schools that had you not want to teach and mentor? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so my master teacher, he did a lot of disciplining and yelling. And every single day I would see him, like his face would be red and puffy from like disciplining. And I really do not like raising my voice and disciplining other people's children. So after seeing that experience, I decided I needed to try something else.
And I'm just bringing this up, guys, it's because, I'm a teacher. I love teaching. I love this form of teaching through the internet. And I love teaching adults. And I commend those people that teach children, but man, you become like a second, like a babysitter. In many cases, you're dealing with disciplinary issues and I can't even imagine At least in the US, that's what it's like. I think if you teach in Japan, you don't have to deal with that as much, or some other cultures. But so I'm really happy that you took it upon yourself to find a different skill set, because a lot of people end up just pushing through that and end up like really unhappy teachers. So anyway, and that, just between you and me, I may keep that in, I may cut that out. I'm just, that's just something that's interesting to me. So now you took the course back in like 2019, was it?
Yeah, in August 2019.
Okay, so tell us what happened after you took the course.
Yeah, so after I took the course, I studied 8 to 10 hours a day. I was really serious about it, and I finished in a 1 week. So I built the WordPress website. I got Google AdWords and Google Analytics certified, and I built out that spreadsheet that you talked about in the course. And I started out sending out my resume. And after maybe 20 job applications, I was contacted back, and he told me to come in and interview. I showed him that spreadsheet. He was super impressed, and the hiring manager hired me on the spot.
That's fantastic. That's how it goes. And what was this first job? Was it at an agency? Was it in-house? What was the
It was
pay?
at a small 10-person startup agency. And I did SEO and PPC, but mainly PPC. And I learned so much from that company.
That's awesome. How much like advertising, were you working on, and what kind of accounts? Like, what was it like working there?
Yeah, there were smaller accounts. They were only like spending like $5,000 per month in ad spend. But there were different verticals like insurance. There were some lawyers and some e-commerce.
Awesome. And did you have like a mentor or somebody on the job helping you?
Yeah, there was always someone that was able to answer questions. So I was able to learn a lot.
That's awesome. We keep hearing that time and again. There's going to be somebody there to, work with you, and you're going to be and I love it. For most people watching, by the way, $5,000 a month doesn't seem like a small budget to most people watching, like, especially when you're starting out, even though it actually is a small budget. So you work there for how long?
I was there only for 4 to 5 months.
Okay. And then what happened?
Well, that job didn't have any like health benefits or any 401k, and I wanted to something more stable. So I decided to interview at a big agency in Los Angeles. And yeah, I was able to increase my salary to $50,000 at that point.
Okay. So, and that was WP Promote, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I know of that agency. And so how did that work? How did you get hired and raise your salary after only 4 months experience? Like, how did that work out?
Yeah. So, during the interview, I just talked about the experience that I had with Google Ads and Bing Ads, and, learning how to like bulk upload ads on Editor. And they really liked even that like 4 to 5 months experience. They were really happy with it. And they really needed employees at that point. So yeah, they hired me.
That's fantastic. And I'm just curious, you said you live in Pasadena. Christine lives in Los Angeles. Where was, at the time you were working in-house, right? It wasn't
Yes.
remote. Where were their offices?
Their office was in El Segundo.
Oh, okay. And you were commuting from Pasadena?
I was only commuting for 2 months, and then the pandemic hit, and I
Oh,
was working from home for the rest of the year.
okay. Well, one of the upsides, as I
Mhm,
know, living in Los Angeles, that commute can be a killer. But
mhm.
and then you started working remote, which is great, which is now the new world order is, remote work, especially in digital marketing. So okay, so you're still in your entry level phase, which is your first year, and you're making about 50K, which is great for a first job. What was it like working at that agency? Was it different types of accounts? Were you working on more bigger budgets?
Yeah, so I was helping support like $1 million budget accounts. And this includes Columbia University. Teachers College is their graduate school where they give out psychology and masters in therapy, masters in family therapy. So I was supporting that account. I was also supporting Irvine Company, which is they build apartments. And I was also supporting Zenny Optical, which is an e-commerce brand for glasses.
Wow. That's huge. And the education space, even though as many as critical as I am, is very competitive. I'm sure that those leads, because colleges make so much money from each student that decides to spend $60,000 or whatever, that the lead cost must have been the cost per click must have been very high in that space for the Columbia. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And each of their leads, they like each degree cost is like $60,000. So yeah, they
How
made
much
a lot.
was it? Like, what was a good lead cost for that university?
It was around like $400.
Yeah. So this is interesting, guys. This is just to let you know what a big business universities are. They're happy to pay $400 for a lead, meaning a prospect, meaning someone that might be interested in their program. And they could probably, at $60,000, they could spend $4,000 or $5,000 per student and still be very profitable to get it. So that's a very interesting niche. But when you're dealing with that kind of money, that is very, very great on your resume. So now tell us about what happened next with your career, and leading to where you are now.
Yeah, so after 1 year there, I got promoted and I was offered $60,000 with a bonus. But I knew that I wanted to continue trying something else. So after 1 month, I wanted to focus on one client instead of like 10 clients because I was like spread really thin. And so I decided to decided to interview at iProspect.
Okay. And you at iProspect, you thought you would get a chance to work on fewer clients? Is that?
Yeah, so I'm only focusing on one client within Microsoft, one business unit within Microsoft.
And what business unit is that?
It's actually LinkedIn.
Oh, you do advertising for LinkedIn?
Yes.
You should do a separate video on that. But you're advertising for LinkedIn on what platform? On Google?
Yes, Google and Bing.
Wow. You're like, wow, this is like, we're talking to like one of the inside, makers of industry here. Yeah, LinkedIn, that's the funny thing too, guys. LinkedIn has to advertise on Google just like everybody else. But that's huge. So this is only 2 years into your career. How did this happen? How did you get the job at iProspect?
Well, I applied, I did the interview, and yeah, they decided to hire me.
Okay. Well, tell us just a little more detail because this sounds like it's a big account. LinkedIn, they got to be spending millions of dollars, right?
Yeah, they are.
You had millions of dollars of ad spend on your resume from your agency job, but how did it go in the interview? Like, what were they looking for when they put the job posting up? Did they say they needed people with like 5 years experience or something? Like, how did that go?
No, they just wanted someone with around 1 to 2 years of experience. And I felt like they really wanted someone that was willing to learn, willing to, work hard. And, and I knew the basics. And yeah, that was mainly it. They didn't really test me on like Excel or like anything like that. It was just like a face-to-face interview.
It's really interesting. And that's awesome. So first of all, guys, this is just how remarkable is it that, this is a huge agency, iProspect. We're working on one of the biggest accounts you can get, LinkedIn, which is a household name, huge company. And they're only looking for someone with 1 to 2 years of experience, which would be very interesting to me if you had applied for this job before you had your previous job, where you were managing millions of dollars. Now, in the interview, I'm assuming you mentioned that you were your accounts you were working on.
Yeah, exactly. So I did tell them, the type of accounts I was working on, and they're all like accounts that they were familiar with. and they like trusted that I had the ability to, work with LinkedIn.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, when you interview, there's going to be some jobs are going to want you to do. It's interesting because if they want you to do a project or test you, it's usually when you don't have that much experience in the beginning. I've had one student just got hired at a big agency in the UK, and he only had about 3 months experience, so he did a big project for them. And I was, well, that's a really good way to communicate that you know what you're doing. But she already had months of experience managing $1 million accounts, and so it's very easy for, this is why I encourage you to build up slowly over time, and then your experience it speaks for itself. So that's awesome. So why don't you tell us, like, what's it like in this field versus working in your other jobs that you had before?
Yeah, so I kind of want to talk about like being in-house at W Promote. It's just amazing the culture that's there, including, I love yoga. They had like yoga teachers come in and teach us during lunch. They had lunch and learns, like they would teach us like really interesting topics like how to buy a house. They would have like lunch and breakfast for us. There were like massage chairs that you could like work in a massage chair. So yeah, that was really cool.
That sounds a lot less like a little different than working in the public school system or in a lab.
Yeah, definitely.
And when you say in-house, just to clarify for people, what you mean is like in the office at an agency, because the term in-house we usually mean is like when you're working for a private company, like you're their dedicated PPC person, but you're just describing the culture of, these agencies, which, will have these perks and this kind of cool culture. And the idea is it makes for a better work environment, doesn't it? It makes it people happier and better workers, doesn't it?
Definitely. And even here at iProspect, they give us half day Fridays just to give us some time back. And we could like, do our like run our errands or like just relax because they know like, we work hard and they just want us to give us some time back.
That's fantastic. And you said at this job, you're making, you have a bonus at this job?
I had a bonus after being promoted at W Promote.
Oh, at Promote. Right. Sorry, I got mixed up. So, wow. And cut. Let me think. I forgot what I was going to ask you next. That's okay, because I edit these together. Yeah, it sounds like you're a lot happier in this field than with this whole setup. And especially during the pandemic, this must have been really great compared to what you were doing before.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that I also like freelance positions are falling into my lap. So on LinkedIn, I actually check the box where like recruiters can contact me. And so when they ask me if I'm open to a new position, I will tell them no, but if if my availability changes, I'll let you know. And then they would ask like, oh, hey, are you free to work, 5 to 10 hours per week as a consultant? And I'm like, sure.
Oh,
So
wow. So how many of those gigs do you have?
I
Those
have
side
two.
gigs?
I have two of those. So like in total, I make between like 75 to like 85K a year on top of
Wow.
it freelance.
I
Yeah.
didn't even realize that. Well, I'll have to amend the introduction. That's fantastic. Um, what should we call it? Or we'll just leave it in here for the viewers who are watching to this point. That is another, I mean, that's something I talk about, guys. Like you have so many options when you get the skill set. And you're not limited just to a day job. But the transition from no experience and working in a fields that you were not happy with to making good money, working remotely and enjoying your job, that's awesome. What's it been like for you personally? Like, I don't know, with your family or your loved ones, as far as this career change, how has it affected that?
Yeah, so for my family, they actually really wanted me to pursue teaching before this because they're like, you put in so much money into it and so much time into it. They were kind of confused, but I told them to give me 1 month to, if I can't get a digital marketing job, then I will go back to teaching. And so, I got the job and they're super happy for me. I know my parents definitely are like really happy for me. And yeah, and I know like my friends are happy for me as well.
That's fantastic. And by the way, guys, just a little educating here. Like that's great that you gave yourself a month and you got the job. If you're watching this, don't give yourself a month. Okay. And if you have any family members giving you grief about this career change, which is such an intelligent career change, so much better than like probably 90% of the other careers that people are pressuring you into, you got to say, give me a year or give me 6 months and you can make it happen earlier than that. But don't like, I think it's remarkable that you worked under that kind of pressure, you know? And I definitely think the way, if you're going to give yourself a month like you did, you got to do what you did, which is 10 hours a day. You know, if you do 10 hours a day in the course and you start applying, you'll get the results. Most people just don't, people are working other jobs. They can't do 10 hours a day. But this is just kind of what's possible when you come into this field and start growing and building something. So let me see if there's anything else. I'm curious, did you have a lot of friends or colleagues in the teaching world who you're still in touch with, who might be like confused by your transition?
I didn't really keep in touch, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, oh, hey, you changed to something else just because of like everything's happened in the pandemic. And I know a lot of teachers are quitting left and right.
Yeah, it's unfortunate in a way because I really believe in teaching. I just think the way that, in elementary school is really important because that's when you're learning the basics. But yeah, being a teacher right now is definitely a little different than being a digital marketer. Like, what would you be experiencing right now if you were still in teaching?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I would be forced to be back in a classroom right now with like 30 people, and it's like in a really crowded conditions. So not ideal.
Not ideal. No.
Mhm.
Let me think. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with anyone watching the interview? Any people considering the course or people in the course? Any advice?
Yeah, I would say definitely try it out, and to not give up and to have a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset and to be gritty. I remember you talked about that in one of your videos, and I really believe in that, to not give up and to be resilient.
Absolutely. I have found over 5 years of doing this that it's like the people that have that attitude and don't give up, they always get results.
I just really want to thank you, Seth, for changing my life. Like, I wouldn't be where I am today if it was not for your course. And I just want to let everyone know that is thinking about the course to definitely try it out. You have nothing to lose and a lot to gain.
Thanks, Christine. That is well said. And I'm very, very happy for you. And we will keep in touch. And thanks again for sharing your story.
Thank you, Seth.